Here's a window. The existence of this window prevents us from seeing the outside world as it is, but rather perceives the outside view once it has been rough. Therefore, when the shape of the window changes, the feeling of the outside world is perceived differently, and psychology tells us that there is a window in our minds, because when we look at a situation, we do not accept it as it is, but interpret it through our own psychological filters. This action of the mind is called frame theory in psychology. Frame theory explains well why some people are suffering, and others don't care about the same situation. This is because each individual has a different form of window in the mind that accepts the situation. Therefore, if we replace the window in the mind with something better, we will be much more free from pain. Surprisingly, this frame theory, which has been studied in modern times, was actually a concept that had already been handed down among the wise 2,000 years ago. Through the philosophy of Stoicism, Stoicism also argues that when humans experience an event, they do not immediately respond, but inevitably undergo a final reaction through each individual's judgment or view of the event. Stoic philosophers believed that most of the painful emotions we experience at this time were not a product of the world, but of our minds, because humans often have irrational intermediate stages, and that changing our judgments and views on events could free us from pain. Thousands of years ago, scientific and practical ways to train the mind were discovered. But why do many modern people still suffer from heartache? Because they don't make the effort to design the windows in their minds. So what kind of effort should we put into it? Ward Farnsworth's philosophy of the solution has practical and in-depth answers to these questions based on Stoicism. Stoicism emphasizes that the first thing we do is to practice, giving no meaning to events and situations we experience. Everything is good and not bad in the first place. It's just how we feel. Of course, some events require decision-making and implementation through thought and judgment. However, at this point, it is necessary to assume that the situation is within my control with my own efforts. If it is beyond my control, it is not worth the energy in the first place. Therefore, it is important to carefully examine whether or not you are in control in Stoicism. Of course, even if we learn these wise methods, it is almost impossible to fully control our minds. In particular, Stoicism says that desire is one of the hardest emotions to control, because even if humans have a perfect life when everything is satisfied, they still demonstrate the situation and suffer from greater greed. Humans quickly demonstrate when they get what they want. Rather, they feel a greater sense of happiness in the process of getting what they want. This is inevitable human nature. At first, the brain releases dopamine, which makes you feel happy about what you get. But the brain doesn't respond much to what you get used to over and over again. So we have to make a conscious, periodic effort to be grateful for what we have. If you don't feel grateful for your efforts, it can be of great help to think about how you would feel if what you have suddenly disappeared. Regardless of whether you have 101 or 10 billion won, if you don't make much effort to be conscious of your gratitude, you will both lead equally unsatisfied lives. However, the loss that someone who suddenly has 10 billion won will feel will be much greater than the person who suddenly has 100 billion won. Both felt like they were living equally unsatisfactory lives, but in the end, the person who had 10 billion won didn't feel satisfied and was potentially living a tremendously grateful life. We've covered the contents of the practical Stoic philosophy that governs the mind through the book Solution Philosophy. In addition to books, relationships with others, death, and learning life are dealt with in depth, so if you're interested, it would be a good idea to look it up. Thank you.